I'm Emily Granados here at Five Towns College tonight for the Meet the Candidates night. Tonight I'm joined with the president, David Cohen. I must ask, how does it feel to be hosting such a lovely event tonight?
It's a thrill for the college to host the League of Women Voters and to have the candidates for the Suffolk County Legislature here on campus to meet with the students and to share their vision for our county.
That's amazing. And speaking of students, a lot of students are involved and the different departments are working together. How does that make you feel?
It's great. You know, Five Towns College prides itself on being collaborative, hands-on, technology-oriented, and to see the students from the various departments, mass comm, film, liberal arts, and the like come together it's amazing. That's who we are. Great community.
Great community we are. Thanks for joining me, David Cohen. Make sure you catch us tonight. Tune into the stream. We will be streaming all night. Thank you. I'm Emily Granados here at Five Towns College for the Meet the Candidates night, hosted by the League of Women's Voters. I'm joined by Diane Slavin. How does it feel to be here tonight with the...
Oh, we're so happy to be co-sponsoring this event with Five Towns College. You guys you really do a great job in making such a professional set for us, and it's really exciting.
Now, Diane, what can we look forward to tonight?
Okay, so tonight you'll get to meet the candidates who are running for Suffolk County legislative positions for the Assembly and for the Senate. And you will hear their views on a variety of issues, from the environment, from gun control, from health, a lot of different topics. And you'll get to see where they agree, where they disagree. Now, they're from various districts, so you would have to know which candidates are your candidates. But we plan to cover a number of topics, and they will discuss them. And they'll have an opportunity, couple of opportunities, to rebut each other. So you can see if one of them doesn't like what the other one said, they can make that correction. They'll do opening statements and closing statements as well.
Well, that's very exciting to look forward to tonight. What are some other things that the League of Women Voters do?
Okay, so our mission is to register voters and to educate them. So it's not enough just to know, oh, it's going to be election day soon, go vote. It's important for you to know what the issues are and to know who the candidates are. It's important to come to an event tonight, like tonight's, and put the names with the faces. So we do a lot of outreach to the community to get voters registered. We also have a very active youth committee. So we go into the high schools, we actually go into the middle schools, we go to the colleges. We've been here a couple times to do voter registration. And we really try to facilitate more civic responsibility and participation.
Well, thank you so much, Diane, and make sure that you're a registered voter. I'm Emily Granados here at Five Towns College reporting, and make sure to catch the stream tonight.
Is this, oh, yes. Okay, all of the candidates have arrived, so I'd like everyone to get seated and we can begin.
I'll take the mic. I think you might be able to put that back in the
Okay,
you know what? Equipment room.
all right. Hello, everyone. I'm Diane Slavin. I'm the second vice president of the League of Women Voters of Huntington, and I'm here to welcome you to our Meet the Candidates night. You're going to meet the candidates running for Suffolk County Legislature. We're so pleased to be co-sponsoring this event with Five Towns College. Special thanks to Tom Calandrillo and his staff and his students who have done such a wonderful job with the set and with the publicity and everything to bring this event to life. The League of Women Voter is a not-for-profit, nonpartisan political organization. This means that we study, adopt, and advocate for political positions, but we never, ever endorse a political candidate or a political party. Our moderator tonight is Lisa Scott, who's president of the League of Women Voters of Smithtown and the Suffolk County Interleague organization. I'm going to serve as the timer tonight. I hope you all have received a program and an index card on which to write questions for the candidates. Some of the students here at Five Towns and the League of Women Voters have prepared questions, but we will also take written questions from you. All questions must be phrased so that all candidates can answer it. When you've written a question on the card, raise your hand and one of the volunteers will collect it. All questions are vetted to be sure they are not aimed at a particular candidate and that the content is diverse so that we can cover as many topics as possible. Also, please note our video recording policy by which all candidates have pledged to abide. All recording must be pre-approved by the League of Women Voters and the videos must be shown in their entirety. This event is being live streamed and tape recorded, and the tape recording will be posted on the League of Women Voters YouTube channel. One last comment, early voting has been enacted in New York State. All registered voters will have the opportunity to vote at a number of designated sites around each county for a period of about 10 days before Election Day. This year it begins on Saturday, October 26th, so if you want to vote on Saturday, you can. And it continues through Sunday, November 3rd. Information about this and two other upcoming Meet the Candidates events are available at the League of Women Voters table outside the auditorium. So now, without further ado, I want to welcome Five Town President, Dr. David Cohen.
Thank you. On behalf of Five Towns College and the Mass Communication Division, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the Five Towns College Performing Arts Center for the League of Women Voters Meet the Candidates Night. We're so thrilled to have our friends from the Suffolk County Legislature with us tonight. Thank you all for being here. It's now my pleasure to lead you all in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Scott. I will be the moderator tonight. I'd just like to go over a little bit of the procedures that all the candidates have agreed to. If I can find them. The candidates are allowed an opening statement. Right? Okay. And then each candidate will get the same question. We're going to go in order, and then we'll start rotating. And we will try to cover a wide variety of questions. I hope that if you have some in front of you, you can pass them in. We're trying to cover a lot of different issues. What we're not going to do is read every single question because the concerns of one frequently are reflected in the concerns of a lot of the other people in attendance. So we will try to get some variety from all those questions. What I'd like to do is just clarify the timing. The opening statement will be 1 minute. This is your introduction to each candidate. The questions, I'll ask them. They will get 1 minute to respond to each question. They each have a red card. Somebody wave a red card, okay? Those are rebuttal cards. That means if the person waves the red card, I keep track, and they are allowed another 30 seconds during that, at the end of all 8 of them responding. They can continue by adding something. But it's only that one person for that red card, and you only get to use it twice. What I would also encourage the candidates is when they do their closing statements, which also is a minute, that's your opportunity not to rehash your intro, but really to make the points that you feel are very important. Because this is also being recorded, I want to remind the audience that when the candidates make their opening statements, if you wish, please applaud. After that, no applause. I stop if there's reaction time. Just hold it till the end. And the same in a sense for the candidates. We live in what I still feel is a very civil society, and a debate, a candidates meeting debate, is an important way for the people who are able to be in the room and also the people who will eventually see it on YouTube, on the Five Towns website, and through other means in its entirety to get a really good picture of your standing on issues and your hopes and plans if elected. If there is anything derogatory or aimed at a single candidate, I will stop it and I don't ask those questions because we don't have the time. This isn't a presidential primary debate. This is a debate for what influences you all the most, I think, which is what happens in your own community. Suffolk County has been terrific in a lot of things that have been going on, and these people want to represent those in their district in the county legislature. So but without further ado, we'll start at this end. The candidates are seated in numerical order, lower number district first. So the first 2 candidates are in the 13th legislative district. Next to them, the 16th 2 candidates, then the 17th, then the 18th. So I will try to keep tabs here of who's going first and rotate it. So Ms. Singer, will you introduce yourself? 1 minute. And please make sure, please make sure that you all are using the mics pretty close to make sure it's picked up.
Hi, I'm Jan Singer. Thank you to my family, to my friends, and to the League for giving me this opportunity. While this would be my first elected position, I feel I bring experience and qualifications. I was president of my conduct community for 5 years, managing a budget of almost $1 million, addressing everything from road clearance to negotiating contracts and getting bids for reconstruction of a sewage pump station. I served on the board of many community organizations. I was even a Girl Scout leader when my children were younger. I ran my own law practice for over 30 years, often negotiating between husbands and wives at the worst part of their lives. If I could negotiate between them, I feel I can bring those skills to the county legislature. If elected, I will balance the need to keep taxes low while providing quality services to make Suffolk County an affordable place to live, both successful for living, working, and raising our families. I will work with the entire county government to protect us all. We cannot reduce crucial services or neglect our infrastructure. It took us generations to build these communities, and we cannot allow them to fail. I have seen my life as one of service, and I hope to continue to do that with your help on Election Day.
Thank you. Okay, Rob Trott.
My name is Rob Trott. I'm currently the legislator in the 13th Legislative District. I grew up there. I grew up in Comac. I became a Suffolk County Police Detective, and for 25 years I worked there. I was in the FBI Violent Crimes Task Force for 10 years. Part of that was in the ATF for 2 years, and then a year in the IRS. I consider this, unfortunately, one of the most corrupt counties I've ever seen in my life, and probably in the country. And I don't say take this lightly, because our district attorney was arrested. And in this United States of America, in the past 25 years, we had not arrested a sitting district attorney. The head of public corruption has been arrested. The chief of police went to federal prison. The head of the Conservative Party went to the federal prison. The IT director went to federal prison. During a time of great economic growth in this country, we have seen our bond rating drop 8 times under Democratic control. 8 times. It's getting worse and worse and harder to live here. So what I'm asking you to do is to think about what's going on and look at the Republicans on this ballot this time and make a choice of change, because right now we're headed nowhere.
Thank you. Ms. Berland?
Hi, good evening. My name is Susan Berland. I am the legislator for the 16th Legislative District. This is my first term. Prior to that, I served on the town board of Huntington for 16 years. I'm an attorney by trade. When I first got elected to the town board, I said I would stop practicing law and be the town's first full-time councilwoman, which promise I kept. And I continue to do the legislative job as a full-time job. I am on 8 committees at the legislature. I chair the Veterans Committee, and I'm the vice chair of Economic Development. And I want you to really listen to what the people up here are saying. Do your research at home. Look us up. See what we stand for. See what we've done. See, what our opinions and our values are, and really make an educated choice, because I think local elected office and the legislature is just so important to everyone here in Suffolk County. And we need to have a legislature that works. And I've enjoyed my time on the legislature. I enjoy serving the people of the 16th District, and I hope to have your support to continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gavia.
Yes. Hi, good evening. My name is Hector Gavia, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters for having us all here today. Our county is facing a fiscal crisis, and that's according to the New York State Comptroller, Tony DiNapoli. He reported that about 2 weeks ago. And we have a budget of over $3 billion. And every year we have a structural deficit that's facing over $200 million. That means that we're spending more money than what we're taking in. But unfortunately, our friends in the legislature, instead of cutting spending, what they decided to do instead was create fees and hidden taxes. So an example of that is when you buy a home and you get a new mortgage, and you have to then record it with the county clerk's office. It used to be a flat fee of $65. Then it jumped up to $500. And let's say that you moved to Florida, and now you have to have a power of attorney, add another $300 to that. We have to stop the fees. We have to stop all of this taxing on the people, and we have to be more responsible in government. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Donnelly.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Tom Donnelly. I'm the current legislator of the 17th Legislative District, which comprises parts of the town of Babylon as well as parts of the town of Huntington. Prior to that, I served as a councilman on a town board in the town of Babylon. I was also a member of the planning board in the town of Babylon. I have a 35-year public safety career, 35 years in the Deer Park Fire Department, holding the rank of captain, and I retired in 2017 as a lieutenant with the New York City Fire Department, decorated over 17 times for bravery. I enjoy serving the residents of the 17th Legislative District, and I look forward to serving you in my next term. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McDermott?
Yes, hello, everybody, and I do want to thank the League of Women Voters, as usual, and Five Downs College for hosting this debate. My name is Michael McDermott. I am running for the first time for legislature. However, I have run for Congress, and most recently in 2014, I ran for governor of New York State. And when I was shooting for the stars, I didn't even hit the moon. And the truth is, I think that I can be more effective for the Suffolk County legislature. As Ms. Berland said, the legislature, we need a legislature that works. I agree with that. What I don't agree with is that this legislature is just not working. Our fees are going up, our deficits are going up. We have junk bond status in the Moody ratings. We're just not doing the job. And all the nice things that they say and all the nice things you can read about them, I think is wonderful. But come on, we have to do something different. I'm the chair of the Libertarian Party of Suffolk. We have automatic ballot access this year, which means we have 62 candidates on the ballot, and I'd like to urge everybody to vote for them. And we chose people of integrity. And if you vote for somebody, I'd like it to be a libertarian, even if they're a Republican or a Democrat, because we weren't picky on that. We were picky on integrity. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Spencer?
Good evening, and thanks to the League of Women Voters and Five-Town College for sponsoring this event. And my name is Dr. William Spencer. I have the privilege of being the first physician to serve in the Suffolk County Legislature, and I've appreciated the opportunity to fight for our families and especially our children. Some of the things I've been able to do with you is to raise the smoking age here first to 21. That saves lives, and now the state has followed. We've also protected our youth from energy drinks and the marketing, which gives them false sense of security and threatens their lives. We've touched hundreds of youth through our mentoring programs, and we've also helped to keep our community safe by working with our law enforcement partners and our community members by providing Narcan. I feel it's important that we continue to move forward and focus on our strengths, and I have a record of accomplishment that I would like to continue to serve. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Chelios?
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you to Five Towns and League of Women Voters for having us all out on this horrible night. So my name is Garrett Chelios. I was born in Huntington Hospital. I've lived in Huntington Station, Huntington, Lloyd Harbor. Haven't gone very far. I live about a mile from Huntington Hospital now. I work in Town Hall. I've been in the banking sector, the staffing sector for the past 25 years. And I had the opportunity to work at Town Hall in the Planning and Environment Department and work with the cell towers. And I love working there, and I was given the opportunity to run. I ran it by my 3 kids, and the main reason why I want to run and make a difference is because I'm terrified that my 3 kids are not going to be able to stay here, given the current fiscal irresponsibility with the current administration. I want to step in. I want to do whatever I can. I want to reach across the aisle. I want to work with everybody I can to make this a place where we can all live so we can enjoy the benefits for our children that we all grew up with. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, just to keep it interesting, I'm going to kind of mess up the order here, so you have to pay attention. In each district, I am now going to start with the person who went second. This is a test. So Rob, you'll get the question, then Jan, Mr. Gavia, you, then Ms. Berland, and so forth, okay? So this next question, because I've found frequently, or the league does, people don't understand what different levels of government do. You know, I did a county executive race, and nobody really knew what the job of county executive was. So we talked about that before and during. You all want to be Suffolk County legislators, either continue a position you have or take on that role. So the question is, why does Suffolk County legislator matter? Why does the legislature matter? What does it do for the community? And what do you think it should do? And Rob, you're first.
Sometimes I lie in bed at night thinking about that. And
Okay.
quite honestly, there are times I think that we might be better off without it. I mean, Connecticut doesn't even have counties. It's just an additional layer of government that we have. I mean, the number one concern is the public safety, it's the police department. We run the roads, the parks, and things like that. Nothing that can't be dispersed amongst the towns. But, you know, long before me, I guess maybe people smarter than me thought that it was a good idea to have county government. You know, back in the old days, it was primarily about the police department, because if what happened in one town, in Smithtown, might not know what happened in Huntington, so it was about putting the department together. And now we have the Suffolk County Police Department. Now, with the advent of technology, the possibility exists that you might not even need that. So generally, it can be done with towns. In a lot of states, it is done with towns. So that's an excellent question. Maybe we should think about abolishing it one day.
Ms. Singer?
Yes, I think there is a need for the county government. We provide many services where it would not be practical to have individual towns providing it. Take, for example, sewage treatment plants. We certainly don't want to have that many sewage treatment plants as we have town government. One of the ways to manage that is through the county. Same thing for so many of our water issues. Again, we need the county for that. I want to suggest that we have things like veterans committees and committees for services for the elderly. Again, not practical to do, breaking it up into town government. I think that county parkland is essential for protecting our water, as well as providing recreational space for residents throughout the county, and it's not dependent upon where you live or individual towns to whom you pay taxes. So I think there's an essential need for the county government, and I think I can add much to that.
Thank you. Mr. Gavia?
Okay, because we have a financial crisis where currently we are in debt for more than $2 billion, we need to talk seriously about making cuts to government. So I agree with Robert Trotta. Before 1970, for over 200 years, they had what was known as the Board of Supervisors, where instead of having legislators, they have the supervisors from the 10 towns meet regularly and discuss the business of the county. And they would perform the same functions that the legislators would do, but we would have a savings of $10 million just by abolishing the legislative body that we have in the county now. We have way too much government, and there's way too much redundancy of services. I don't care what political party you're in. When you call me to sell your home, the #1 reason is that you can no longer afford to live here. And we are tired of the fees. We're tired of the taxes. How many more red light cameras? How high do you have to make these fees before people say to you, enough is enough? Our goal is to make government smaller and to make it more affordable for everybody to live here. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Berlin?
As someone who served in town government for 16 years and now is on the legislature, I think the Suffolk County legislature is incredibly important. And you know, it's our job and responsibility to represent the people of the county, to provide public safety for them, to make sure the parks are good, to make sure there's veteran services, to make sure there's economic development and job opportunities for people in the county, that the county roads are managed. There are so many larger issues. I mean, I passed a piece of legislation to protect young people when they go to amusement parks and water parks, that if there's anything that happens when they're there, that the owners of the park or the water park have to call the police, because there were girls who were assaulted and there were men who were walked out of the park without anything happening to them. And we were trying to figure out, how do you do that? How do you legislate good behavior? But when you have a county government that the county inspects these facilities, so you have an umbrella over that so that you can regulate what happens and affect people's lives. You know, if you don't want a county government, I don't understand why you run to be on a county government.
Okay. Folks, no emotion, stone face. You got to listen to everybody. Okay. Next is Mr. McDermott.
Why does the Suffolk County legislature matter? Listen, whoop, I need the microphone. We have so many levels of government, and all it does is cost the taxpayers more and more money. And as Hector said, there's a redundancy of services that's beyond belief. And to make up for it, rather than raise your taxes, they say, oh, we're keeping taxes down, but then they have $20 to $40 million in red light camera tickets, which are only located in the poorer areas. And it's alarm fees, plastic bags. I mean, we need to have less government. We don't need more government. There was a Huntington Town Board of Supervisors, and that worked fine. They're busy doing their own job, but so is everybody else. And the fact is, we need to make government smaller, more affordable, or none of us are going to be here. Our children are leaving. My one daughter lives in Fort Lauderdale. My other one wanted to move to Montreal. I kept her here. I had to buy her house to keep her here. We have to make government smaller. There's just no question about it.
Thank you. Mr. Donnelly.
Thank you. So on the premise, I agree with some of Rob's thoughts, but to know where you're going, you have to know where you've come from. So the legislature was formed by county charter after a referendum in this county where it passed by all the voters because there was a concern at that time, and just follow along because I'm a bit of a history buff, there was a concern that the Board of Supervisors could not manage county services. So the legislature was formed with the essence of one resident, one vote. And we do perform a vital role. We perform a very vital role of oversight over the executive branch of government, as well as oversight over the different departments. Legislator Trotter referenced the police department. We have oversight over the police department. I chair the Public Safety Committee. Legislators Berlin and Trotter serve on that committee as well. And we question their daily operation, as we should. That is the legislative branch's role in government at the town level, at the county level, at the state level, and at the federal government level. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chilius?
I think that the role of county government is to basically be an extension of our constituents. The county, the state, people aren't going to know what the folks in our districts are thinking if we don't hear from them. And we need to let them be the voice, and we have to remember that we work for you. Politicians, sometimes they take their constituents for granted. We have to listen to your ideas. We have to share your ideas and then champion them when we can. And then the most important thing that we do in the legislature is we have to spend your money, your tax dollars. So I would make sure that every dime that we collect from you earns its way onto every line item, into every budget that we pass in the legislature. That's what I think is the most important part of what we do. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Spencer?
Thank you. I think county government plays a crucial role, and I think that we need to make government not necessarily smaller, but efficient. Having a county government allows us to do the things that towns couldn't do. In addition to public safety, for instance, a health department. When we look at Suffolk County, it's bigger than 10 states. So there are states that do have towns, but there are smaller populations. But the larger states where you have the high population density, to be able to maintain an office of medical examiners, to be able to have services that towns would have to have a lot of redundancy, and by having a county government, we in effect do save money. So I think the county government is essential.
Okay, thank you. The next set of questions are going to reflect what we're getting from the audience too, which relates to the high cost of living in Suffolk and the question of affordable housing. Absent eliminating county government, which you've all given your opinions on, so we won't go in that 1 minute for a discussion of that. And I'm going to ask Dr. Spencer to start, and we're going to come back from the 18th to the 17th, 16th, 13th. The question is really, what can the county do to make young people find workforce/affordable housing?
Well, we need to take advantage of technology, and we also need to take advantage of our strengths. One of the difficult things that we have here in Suffolk County is that we're a summertime economy. Our beautiful bays, our boats, our beaches, our lighthouses, people are attracted. But during the winter months, we see that a lot of families go to other places. So one of the things we could do to improve our economy is we need to develop a wintertime focus, for instance, having a convention center or having a sports team or something that could attract families. We also need to take advantage of our academic centers to be able to provide the technological experience to be able to work for your Microsofts and your Oracles, and be able to give our young people the high-paying jobs that they need in order to be able to come back here to Suffolk. So we have to be creative. We have to work and develop our business districts responsibly, and we have to have a housing system that gives our young people a place to affordably be able to live.
Thank you. Mr. Chilius, same question.
Well, I think the most important thing is affordable housing is only affordable if you have young people with jobs where they can actually pay for those houses. We were the county and the island that came to the rescue in World War II. Fairchild Republic built planes for us. We built the lunar lander right here in Bethpage. We've always been at the forefront of technology, and we've always provided great paying jobs, which created the first essentially middle class in this country. The problem is we've lost our focus a little bit, and a lot of the jobs seem a bit stale to young people. We need to attract companies in here that young people are excited to work for, where they can make the kind of living where they can afford to live here, so they can experience the type of life that we all experienced. It starts with great jobs and great employment, and then the housing will follow from there.
Okay, Mr. Donnelly, your question?
So it's two parts, jobs, 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 which has already been referenced. We need to do a better job at generating manufacturing jobs and technology jobs. In fairness, you know, the current administration is working hard, I think, to try and get some of those companies to come in. Workforce housing shouldn't be like a negative word. It shouldn't be a bad word, but it's got to be geographically located that it's going to be effective. And if you look at areas like Patchogue and Farmingdale Village, when it's centered around mass transit, it does have a level of success. So I would continue to encourage that and continue to encourage our IDA folks as well as our economic development folks to try and bring the manufacturing jobs in. And then the last piece is I serve on the college committee as well, and we need to continue to train young men and women who want to go into the trade industry, who want to be plumbers, who want to be electricians, who want to use their hands as a craft, and continue that training. So Suffolk community is really doing a terrific job at that, so that we continue to have those middle-class jobs that have been referenced that are so important, you know, to maintain an quality of life here on Long Island, both in Nassau and Suffolk. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McDermott, same question?
Yes, the high cost of living is certainly one big aspect. But I manage two properties on the island, one in Riverhead and one in Hempstead. And they are affordable living, all right, which is kind of a nasty term in these days. And most of the people are on Section 8, in Riverhead especially. And what that means is their rent is directly related to their income. So what happens is they don't work, and they get sometimes zero rent. They have a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment for zero rent, and that's being subsidized by the taxpayer. Now, if they get a job, like I said, the rent goes up. But what they end up doing, many of them, just to live, is to get a job off the books or deal in other things like drugs. So it's a constant wear and tear on the police and everything else. And the system is just broken. It's just broken. And I'm not saying pull everything away immediately, because these people won't live and they'll be homeless. So we have a real problem because nothing is being done. And that's what we need to do, is get some real serious things done. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Berland?
Yes, I think it's incredibly important that we provide workforce housing so that we can keep our young people here. One of the key questions is, how long are these units going to be affordable? And I believe they should be affordable in perpetuity. When I was on the town board, we passed a 20% set-aside law, and those houses have to remain affordable in perpetuity, and they didn't have such a requirement in the county. So I drafted a piece of legislation to require that the county's portion of affordable housing, a percentage of those, will remain affordable in perpetuity. Because once you have a job and you have a place to live, you don't want it to revert back to market rate housing, because then the next generation of young people don't have an opportunity. And what's very sad is to hear that workforce housing has to always be equated with Section 8 housing. It's two very different groups of people. We need to, provide Section 8 housing for people who need that, but we also have to provide workforce housing. And it's not a bad word, it's not a bad thing, and we need to take care of people and give them jobs and places to live.
Thank you. Mr. Trotta? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Singer.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, sorry. You got to keep track of me as well. Yes, my apologies.
Don't start my timing while this goes on.
Yeah.
What young people need are high-paying jobs. The reason why my father, and some of you have grandparents, why they moved out to Suffolk County, because my father was offered as a young engineer to work for an engineering firm in Suffolk County, so he moved the family there for high-paying jobs. Now, slowly but surely, a lot of these high-paying jobs have left Long Island. At one point, we had more than 35 of the top 500 Fortune 500 companies headquartered here on Long Island, all providing high-paying jobs. So you could talk about all the affordable housing that you want, okay? However, you're going to keep people poor in perpetuity if we don't bring back businesses, because only private industry can provide good paying jobs. And unfortunately, we have a culture here that is against business and against giving young people good jobs. Today, the highest paying employers are the government and healthcare. We need to change, and we need to bring back businesses here and let them know that Suffolk County is a place that can provide good jobs for the young people.
Thank you. And now, Ms. Singer.
There are a lot of answers to this question. First, I'm very much supportive of the idea of workforce housing. It is linked totally to the availability of transportation. So we need to be improving our transportation services. We need, obviously, to be providing good jobs. I really think we need to do that through significant training. I want to agree with the two legislators who have spoken before me, Legislator Donnelly and Legislator Berlin. I think we need to keep this housing in affordable in perpetuity. I also think we need to be linking with Suffolk County Community College in order to provide training. We need to make sure our IDA tax breaks go only to companies that actually continue to provide the jobs. Often they provide them in the beginning, and then after a little bit of time it peters out, and that is unacceptable. We need good jobs. We need union jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Trotta.
Unfortunately,
Could you pick up the mic? I want to make sure everyone hears.
Unfortunately, there's really no such thing anymore as affordable housing, because even a controlled apartment is $2,000 for a one-bedroom or two-bedroom, or probably $3,000. And why would a company come to Long Island when a house is $500,000 and the taxes are $12,000 a year, and the world's changed? You don't need to be here. You could be in North Carolina, where the house is $300,000, nicer, and it's $1,200 in taxes. That's why companies are leaving here, because it affects their people and their profitability. And until we realize that and stop raising our taxes and fees and making it unattractive for people to live here, it will never change. It will actually get worse. And if it wasn't for New York City, and if you notice all the areas that people talk about the train stations, people commuting to the city, if it wasn't for New York City, this place would be a ghost town. I represent some of the wealthiest areas on Long Island, and you drive in those neighborhoods, and the houses are for sale.
Okay. The next question, it comes from some of your answers to this one. And I'm going to ask Mr. Chelios to start, so we'll stay with the 18th, but do the person on the right first, okay, in each one of them. And this question comes in advance. It's describe your plan to balance open spaces with economic development and the increase in traffic that it would cause. So it really is relating to what people are talking about here. We need economic development, but in fact, when you're out in the community, people talk about not wanting their areas to change. They like the tree-lined street suburbia, you know, the post-World War II dream as everything developed. So talk about how you would envision a balance for Suffolk County if elected.
Well, it's a very delicate balancing act, because, I mean, just tonight, we're missing out the C6 zoning town board meeting in Huntington, and that's really a question that hits right at the heart of what we're discussing here: open spaces versus the white picket fence, the environmental factor. Lawns are now no longer in vogue. People prefer the xeriscaping with more natural grasses and so forth. The county needs to be a little more proactive in terms of securing our wetlands and developing it. I think there's a lot of blighted properties. There's a lot of elephant stores, closed down businesses that we could develop and then hopefully use that for some workforce housing or maybe more affordable housing. I know there's been a lot of work on the clean water. Doc's done a great job with that. That's terrific. In terms of open spaces, the waterfront development's been successful almost everywhere that's been tried. I think that's a very important thing that we need to work on. But balancing what people want, the white picket fence and the 1 acre housing versus what's sustainable and what's affordable, is a very difficult challenge. And you need to bring smart people together who can work together and come up with some solutions.
Thank you. Dr. Spencer?
And I thank Garrett for his insight working on the planning board, and I think he is correct in that regard. We do have within the county farmland preservation, open space, that I think those programs are robust and help us preserve our open areas. But as we look towards the future, we are an island, and as our children come back, as our population increases, we have to become smarter in terms of how we manage our congestion. First and foremost, the most important thing is to have community buy-in. I think when you engage the people get it right. I think that we have to be able to look at technology and building our transportation infrastructure. And I like the ideas of building around our downtown areas where we have our gyms and our health clubs, but people being able to walk to the train station and not have to maintain a car, having bicycle paths, and being able to build in such a way where we build efficient green units, but at the same time maintain from on the outside our open spaces.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McDermott?
Yes, I'd have to agree with Doc Spencer on just about everything he said, as well as Garrett. So I want to just skip over to a project that's going on that I think very few people know about. Yeah, everybody knows where the Newsday plant was, right? Newsday has vacated. And they're planning on, I don't know if you all know this, but they're planning on building that facility where it's going to be they're going to have loading docks that'll have 108 trucks coming in and going out per hour, and an 800 person garage for employees. Now, while it all sounds good, there's no way for that number of trucks and that number of employees to leave or get there. So we've been fighting to put a light on Pine Lawn Road where they can actually exit, make a left, and get to the expressway. Otherwise, they have to go down in residential areas. So there's a balance there that we were able to force Harts Mountain to do a traffic study, which they weren't required to do, so that we could find out what is the best way of handling a situation like that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Donnelly?
Just ditto basically to most of the comments. You know, it's a balance, I think, relative to maintaining the suburban quality of life and then trying to provide the younger generation, the millennials, with affordable housing. And it's really up to the millennials, I think, that they need to engage as well. They need to engage the local governments, particularly at the town level, because the town has control of most of the zoning laws. The county doesn't, on what can be zoned to be more dense and what can be zoned to still maintain the suburban quality of life. Just in regards to the Newsday project that my opponent referenced, at the moment, I'm not really too happy with the new developer. He's using New Jersey labor, and those that know me know that I fight very hard for the local trade unions here on Long Island. And I'm going to basically be opposing that development until the developer is willing to use our local folks for these jobs. Outsourcing jobs is probably the #1 challenge that we have, and we have a new developer doing it right here in our own backyard. So I intend to take up that fight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gavia?
Yes, this is a very common issue that I am literally seeing almost every day. And there are two groups of people that I know that are actually right now at the town of Huntington fighting to prevent a changing of zoning. The problem that we have here is that you'll have a farm owner that owns a farm or some piece of land, and then naturally they want to do something with it. So then they have to apply for change of zoning from what may be residential to commercial or something else. And part of the big issue is lack of communication. That's the common theme that I see with residents in different areas that have approached me, actually. So we need to do a better job also of having communication between these landowners and the residents as well, because in some cases, they'll find out that there was a zoning board meeting that just happened last week, and it's been approved, and now the town is going to vote on it. So we have to have some way of allowing the residents that live within a certain radius to have some input in what's being done in the land adjacent to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Berlin?
Well, there's a big difference between the county and the town. If you want to be in town government, the town is the one responsible for the zoning and planning issues and the rezoning. And as a councilwoman for 16 years, the most important thing I found was combining, the developer with the community, and not wanting to, go forward with any kind of development unless and until you met with the community, you met with the civic association, you showed them the plans, you asked them their input, and they participated in the project from the beginning. Those are the kind of projects that are successful. When a developer comes in and doesn't communicate with the community, that's when you have a problem. And when a developer tries to put more than they should on their parcel, that's when you have a problem. And when they put it in areas that it really shouldn't be, that's where there's a problem. So we need to work together. But the county, in terms of preserving farmland, there's farmland, a lot of it is out east. So when we out here, in the western part of Suffolk, actually find a piece that we think is good, we want to develop, we want that not to be developed, and we want to be able to preserve that, to preserve our aquifer and our waters, so that for generations to come, we have water to drink.
Thank you. Mr. Trotta?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate. My legislative district has a lot of open space, and that's because we've spent $1 billion over the past 25 years with a quarter-cent sales tax, mostly out east. I mean, all of us here have one thing in common: we will fight for every acre we can preserve in western Suffolk. And, it's unfortunate that people talk about bike sharing and things like that. And the reality is, we live in suburbia. I mean, I don't know who's going to take a bus. You're going to walk through a neighborhood to get to a road to take a bus somewhere? I mean, they talk about this rapid bus transit up Nichols Road so they can connect Stony Brook University with the Ronkonkoma train station. Anybody tell them that there is actually a train station in Stony Brook? And that when we recently cut one of our bus routes, it was actually the bus route between Stony Brook and Ronkonkoma because of lack of ridership. The planning, it's a lot of talk, but not a lot of action.
Thank you. Ms. Singer?
I actually agree with Mr. Trotta on one or two things. I do believe it is essential that the not in my backyard philosophy that governs so much of any kind of planning and utilization of land for anything other than open space is overwhelming. We need to engage the civic associations when it comes to any kind of construction, whether we're talking about something that's along the railroad tracks in Huntington Station, or whether we're talking about the installation of industrial areas along Town Line Road between the town of Smithtown and Huntington Township. The civic associations have a tremendous role, and that means you have a tremendous role in making those determinations. And we have to trust in you that you care enough about the open space issue to protect our water, as well as the development of industry and housing, so that we can move forward and continue to have Long Island grow.
Okay, thank you. The next question, we're actually going to start with Ms. Berland, and we will go east. Okay, and then we'll circle back here on the west side. This is a test. This question came in advance. The lack of proper sewage disposal has been contaminating our sole source aquifer. Specifically, what laws would you promote to deal with the nitrate problems and pesticide toxins that have been degrading our drinking water on a Suffolk County level now?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most important issues that faces us now is a quality of water and the future, that our children are not going to have good quality water unless we take care of it. So at the county level, we had resolutions that I voted for that allowed residents to pass referendums to see whether they wanted the sewer upgrades in their communities. And it gave them the opportunity to decide if they wanted to pay that extra money to be part of a sewer district to make that happen. So we sponsored those went into referendum, and I support them wholeheartedly. Also, there is money for people that have, that can't connect to sewers and have their own septic system. And there's a $10 million pot of money that can go to residents who want to upgrade and have the state-of-the-art facilities at their homes. So I support that wholeheartedly. I think that people need to apply for this money and get this money, because if you can't connect to a larger sewer, you can at least have the state-of-the-art infrastructure on your own property, that your septic system will be the best it can be. And we have to make sure that we're not doing any outflows into the waters, and we need enforcement for that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gavia?
Okay, drinking water is definitely something that we all should take very seriously. And I am very concerned about the overdevelopment that's going on in both Nassau County and Suffolk County. And I think it's going on way too fast, and it's a little bit out of control, and we need to monitor that. Because if you know a little bit about history with Manhattan and New York City, they were forced to build a pipeline to upstate New York because they polluted their natural aquifers simply because of overpopulation and overdevelopment. So we have to make sure that we don't follow that path. And we may have to do a study to see if perhaps we should, in the near future, thinking about building a similar pipeline to upstate New York. I'm not too convinced that an expensive septic system is going to be quite the solution for everybody. It may help in certain areas, but to force people to spend more money than what's absolutely needed on an unproven technology may not make sense. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Donnelly?
Again, just kind of ditto to everything that Legislator Berlin said. I just would continue to add that the Southwest Sewer District has to be a priority and continue to expand that. So we're working right now on several areas, particularly on the Babylon and in South Huntington area, to get the sewers into those areas. In regards to the upgraded septic systems, it's a good plan. It's through federal grant money. My concern is that I don't know that there's enough outreach that they do. And in the way I conduct myself at the Horseshoe, I worked with Legislator Trotter to force the administration to make sure that they're doing enough outreach and that they're getting out to these areas to let the residents know that this program is available. But water quality is really a bipartisan issue, so I think everybody wants to solve it. I think it's just a matter of how we get there. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. McDermott?
Yeah, I have to agree with what most everyone said. However, I don't think upstate New York is going to really like us sending our sewage up to them. I mean, now we're shipping things up to their backyard. Remember the Islip Barge and the Southwest Sewer District, as you said, and the corruption and the problems associated with it. We have to plan better on every aspect of government, and the sewage disposal is a major problem. I think the solution of making sure that nobody can live on Long Island anymore is one issue that could possibly solve that problem, but it's not one that I prefer. We really have to send to it. I read a study about 15 years ago about something called glass fault, where they would take they would take sewage, but not sewage, but garbage. Instead of these big giant mounds, they would burn it into a self-contained thing and turn it into asphalt that didn't leach down into the aquifer. That's a solution from 15 years ago that might just be worth looking at again if anybody's heard of it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. Spencer?
There are more than 380,000 homes that are not sewered in Suffolk County, and that's unacceptable. More homes than the entire state of New Jersey. It is absolutely science that it is true. And what we've seen the nitrogen levels go up, and we have to have a plan. We can't stick our head in the sands. And the Reclaim Our Water initiative, where we provide grants, where we slowly take advantage of technology. It's not going to be practical that we're going to go back and sewer all of these homes, but now we have the technology and home wastewater treatment systems that can do it. So I think the technology is proven. We have to start with the plan that we take the most vulnerable areas and we work our way in. And we're starting to do that. Before I leave office, what I'd like to do is to get sewer infrastructure extended from Huntington Station down to the mall. And by doing that, we're going to be able to bring in businesses that can't be there because we don't have the clean water flow to be able to do these things. So I sit on the Board of Health. This is real, and we have to take it seriously.
Thank you. Mr. Chelios?
Yeah, I mean, I echo the sentiments of a lot of folks up here today. I'm a boater, and I can tell you firsthand, when we get a heavy rain, not only are half the beaches on the North Shore closed because of nitrogen runoff and all the other contaminants, in addition to whatever state funding and federal funding we can get for upgrading and more efficient cesspools, as well as the sewers, whatever we can do within budget and not bankrupt the county, we have to do that. But I think a lot of it has to fall on educating the homeowners, that day-to-day activities can really have an impact on the water that we're eventually going to be drinking. Nitrogen runoff from fertilizers is a big deal. Inefficient water treatment plants is a big deal. Those are the easy things. That's the low-hanging fruit that we need to explore first. But it has to be taken seriously because we only have one little island and we're all getting our water from the same place. So any efforts we can do to make it better, obviously I'd support.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Singer.
Those 380,000 homes that Dr. Spencer referred to represent 75% of Long Island with no sewers. We have all of our wastewater going down to our aquifer. We have the nitrogen that we put on our soil, which is not often going down into our aquifer. It's washing off into our rivers, our streams, our ponds, and our coastlines. It is destroying the oyster beds that help fill the water at our coastlines. We need to be containing the nitrogen use, and the only way to do that is with sewers, especially in commercial areas and in residential areas. The alternative on-site wastewater treatment solution that has been proposed for the Reclaim Our Water initiative. We've kicked this can down the road too long. We cannot afford not to tackle this problem now.
Okay, Mr. Trotta.
I think we're all in agreement on that. I mean, in my district, my biggest concern actually is the uncapped landfills. I mean, we've recently discovered there's 2 or 3, 26-acre, 20-acre pots that have been dug down to the groundwater in the 70s and 80s, filled with garbage, and never capped. So that's something I'm working on right now, and it's really only because only became a county issue because they never paid the taxes, and now we don't even own it, but it's in something called the land bank, which is, in my opinion, a little bit incompetent. But I think we all agree. Unfortunately, I've seen some of these results of these initiative systems you put in your own property, and they're not very good because if you use bleach in it to bleach your sink, it will kill the bacteria. The maintenance is much more than they thought it would be. And actually, I had one where a little girl was walking across the cover, a 2-year-old, and fell in. And luckily, her 4-year-old brother was there and pulled her out by the arm, otherwise she would have been killed. So there's a lot of factors involved in this. And, I think lawn fertilizer is also a huge one we should be looking at.
Okay, thank you. I want to pursue the environmental question a little further. Mr. Gavia, this one would start with you, okay? Whether it's climate change, there are a ton of factors, but storms are affecting Long Island, Suffolk County, a great deal more. Last week, I tried to go out to eat in in Bay Shore, and I was called by the restaurant because there were 3 feet of water in their parking lot, which reminded me of the Bavarian Inn in Lake Ronkonkoma about 15 years ago. But the point is that things can't stay the same way. What would you suggest in terms of either or remediation, your attitude towards development along the coastlines, existing development, commercial and residential, and perspective, and emergency preparedness in terms of the role of the county?
Okay, well, I oppose vehemently overdevelopment, and I do believe that it's affecting our environment. We just had a discussion about the septic systems and the drinking water, and what I want to be very clear about is when I had that discussion, I wasn't talking about connecting sewers to upstate New York. What I was talking about is that if we continue to do this mass overdevelopment with TODs and buildings, like if they're successful in creating the Heartland, which is going to have eventually 9,000 apartments in a small space there, where are we going to get our water from? So we have a big responsibility to do more studies and find out the environmental impacts of any type of development that we're doing. And I don't think we're doing enough because the problem is you have somebody like Walkoff, who I met personally, who gave me some piece of paper saying that, oh, the drinking water will be fine. But he, paid for that study.
Thank you. Ms. Berlin?
Yeah, I think you're asking about what do we do to shore up our coastlines when you have storms. And we have this debate at the legislature a lot because there, on the East End, there are, restaurants that are right on the water and they get washed out and then they get built up again. And people have homes right there and they want to keep their homes on the water and want to have these, waterfront properties. But there comes a point where, based on climate change, our climate's changing here on Long Island, and our storms are ravaging our coastline. So we have to make intelligent decisions on where we're building and where we don't build. And maybe, we build further in, and maybe we try to shore up our, our coastlines better than we're doing, or, they're not going to be existing. We're an island. We're surrounded by water, and the water is coming up faster and faster because of climate change. So we really need to make really smart development decisions, whether we continue to develop on these waterfront properties, or not.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McDermott.
Well, we're still rebuilding after Hurricane Sandy. Excuse me. I see a 0. Am I done already? No? Okay, thank you. No.
Nope, you get your minute.
On the shoreline, we have a particularly difficult problem, as Mrs. Berlin said. I mean, we are surrounded by water. When the water raises 3 or even less, but 3 or 5 feet, where's that water going to go? It's going to go inland, and there's just no. I don't know how you would stop that amount of water coming in. I've seen people displaced, people that came back to their house and their dog survived because it was on top of a trunk floating in the attic. And I think that the biggest problem we have going here is a lot of the planning that goes into it. Do you know in Hurricane Sandy, we had the Hurricane Sandy Relief Fund? And do you know that the only way Congress approved that was if $5 million of that money went to a fishery in Alaska, because they wanted to get the vote from the Alaskan congressman. And that's part of the problem with government. It's always a give and take, and it's not usually for the benefit of the people. It's a benefit for some people. But we have so much to do, and I don't know what to do about, building up that kind of like walls around the island. I mean, it's just too overwhelming. We have to really plan.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Donnelly?
Coastal resiliency is probably the greatest threat that Long Island faces today, and the federal government, particularly FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineers, really need to step up. So many of the coastlines are controlled at the town government level, and the towns apply for grants that have to come through the county. They go directly through the County Emergency Management Office. So the cooperation between the towns and the counties, critical, but at the end of the day, the federal government has to take Long Island and put it at the top of the list. We already have a breach at Fire Island. We have a whole host of issues. When I was on the town board in Babylon related to erosion, it was already up to Ocean Parkway. So this is a national issue. It's not a county issue. The county doesn't have the infrastructure or the funds to deal with it. The federal government must step up to the plate, and we got to hold our federal officials, our congressional delegation here on Long Island, accountable to make sure that Long Island is protected on both the North Shore and the South Shore. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chilius?
Well, I agree with Mr. Donnelly. We have to hold the feet to the fire of our federal representatives and have the government chip in where they can. But on the local level, I think it's our responsibility as a county to kind of put pressure on the towns and subsequently on the developers who are eager to build $5 million houses on the water with beautiful docks and build restaurants that stick out over the coastline. And then those are the owners of the homes who come running to us when they get washed away in the ocean. The coastline is a blessing and a curse. We're lucky to have it because it draws people to it. It's unfortunate to have it because it draws people to it. I think the towns need to step up locally, and the legislator could probably put a little bit more pressure on the towns to be a little more responsible with their waterfront development.
Okay. Dr. Spencer?
I agree. I think that the problem is some of it's man-made and some of it is due to changes we're seeing in our environment. That is one area where I do agree with some of our opponents that overdevelopment is key. If you look at satellite images of are just airplane images of our coastline, you can see that the green areas along the coastline have decreased almost 90% over the last 50 years. And it's the greenery that actually holds the coastline intact. We can dump as much sand as we want, but if there's nothing holding it together, we're in trouble. Our sea levels have risen, our temperatures have gone up, and we are now seeing 100-year storms every year. So we do have to make sure that we control greenhouse gases. We have to be aware of the impact of climate change, but locally, we do have to limit the development of our coastlines.
Thank you. Mr. Trotter, your turn.
I'm going to read some numbers. Jerry Wolkoff, 118,000. RX Development, 113,000. Lero Engineering, 99,000. Casigna Aurelia, 75,000. H2M Architects, 55,000. Albanese, 32,000. County Unions, 130,000. That's the money in campaign contributions our county executive took in the past few years. That's the real issue here. Everything we talk about has to do with the inflated amount of money it costs to run for office. And who are they beholden to? Are they beholden to the people of Suffolk County, or are they beholden to these people who fill their war checks with cash? That's the issue here. We shouldn't be talking about anything else except campaign finance reform, because everything goes from there. When you're flat busted broke and sign a 28% pay increase, 3 times the cost of living with your employees for 8 years, there's something wrong with the system. And we can talk till we're blue in the face about sector systems or cesspools, but until we conquer this, they'll never be solved.
Thank you. Ms. Singer.
I disagree. I think this question and the last question that we had addressed about water are tied together, and that if we don't protect our water, our investment in our homes will not be worth anything, because the minute you're trying to sell a house on Suffolk County that doesn't have quality water, the value that anybody will pay to move here will be non-existent. With regard to the coastline, I'm not sure how much is publicly aware. The Army Corps of Engineers is trying to protect New York City. And in their protection of New York City, they have proposed floodgates, for lack of a better term, which would divert the water away from the city so that it will not be flooded away as it was during Superstorm Sandy. What we need to understand is that if you push water off from one direction, it doesn't have a place to go unless it backs up in another. And on the North Shore and on the South Shore, we run the risk that the federal government plan could end up hurting Long Island. We do need to hold our county, our state officials, and our federal officials to account, but mostly the federal officials. We can't afford it.
30 seconds, Mr. Trotta.
Yeah, just to make it clear, we had $200 million in a sewer stabilization fund that was used, that could have expanded sewer systems, subsidized these innovative systems. But guess what? We got ourselves involved in contracts we can't afford to pay and drained that fund. But don't worry, we're paying it back 5% a year till 2029, when a balloon payment of $105 million is due. And guess where Steve Ballone will be? In Florida. It's incompetent what we've done
Thank
to the
you.
citizens of this county.
Okay, we also have a red card from Mr. Donnelly. 30 seconds.
Yeah, my good friend, Legislator Trotta. Just for full transparency, particularly as it relates to the Heartland project, both myself and Legislator Berlin, we both sit on the Public Works Committee, and we both vehemently opposed his request to hook up to the Southwest Sewer District, because both of us felt that the areas that we represent, particularly in the Huntington and Babylon area, need to be sewered before he even comes close to tapping into that. So besides being opposed to the project, we both voted against his sewer hookup. Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. McDermott, red card.
Yes, the one thing that Rob Trotta said that you all have to listen to are these campaign contributions. They're going to one side of the legislature, and they're causing problems for those individual people. I mean, not the legislators that are getting the money, but the different unions and the PBA and that sort of thing. This has got to stop. I mean, we must stop these campaign contributions. It's so much money. And I'm running as a libertarian. You know how much money I've raised? None. because I don't take money from corporations. And we're just not going to let that
Thank you.
happen.
Thank you. Anybody else want to comment? Use your red card? No? Okay. But we did get a bunch of questions about campaign finance reform. Coincidentally, they're all worded the same way, a mystery, but okay. What are your thoughts on the county's campaign finance reform? And I would suggest that each one of you answer that question in terms of, and you only get a minute, I realize, the problem, but your solutions to it too, okay? Because that, in the name of the game is, if you're elected, you have to come up with laws and develop a consensus of your fellow lawmakers to actually enact the legislation. So this one, we'll start with Mr. Donnelly, and we will head east from there.
So if I think the question is about public financing, right?
Yeah.
If I understand you.
Yeah.
So we're having a public hearing in November. I don't have an opinion on it just yet, just because I want to listen to all the facts. So I don't want to say that I'm for it or against it until I hear all the testimony at the public hearing. Clearly, you know, some of the special interests that has been referenced about the developers and/or trade unions and/or municipal unions, that's just the law. That's the way that we operate right now across the board. So, you know, there's limitations on contributions, but all of us comply with the regulations as they're set forth. So the public financing component may change that a little bit, but I think we have to listen to the testimony first. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. McDermott.
Well, while you're waiting for the testimony, how about answering the question about how many campaign contributions did everybody here receive from these special interest groups? I'm not asking you. That's a rhetorical question. I don't expect you to answer it, but you can look it up. You can look up everybody on here and where they've gotten their money from. And then you look at the votes. The red light camera program, huge contributions, and they just voted to extend it for another 5 years with the belief, I think Doc Spencer said, that he believes that they're going to fix the problem. It's a flawed system. There's traps set up with yellow lights being shortened, and if you want to test that, just go to a red light camera and count number of seconds before it turns from from green to red, and you'll see the yellow lights are shorter at those intersections, and they're only in the poorer areas. So why are they voting like that? I mean, it's public safety. 35 years in public safety, and we have red light cameras where accidents are completely out of control with the number of accidents. So anyway, I'd like you to look up those campaign finance.
Dr. Spencer?
I think that the money in campaigns really takes away the voice of the people, because the ability to communicate is typically those that have the money, and they're able to do the mailings and the media. I think it makes it very hard for us to hear other voices, and I think that one solution would be to have a public-funded elections, but then in an area that's heavily taxed as it is, I think the debate is how do we get there, because I think that no one wants additional taxes on their bill, but I would abolish all campaigns as far as being private funds, and I would say that everyone has to be on equal footing, and then it's really your positions and your voice that would be important to be able to get your message out.
Thank you. Mr. Chelius.
I think Doc just answered the question for me. I think that it becomes impossibly difficult for somebody with a new voice, a new opinion, to enter the debate. I don't think the framers intended it to be a union shop, politics and government. It's supposed to be based on ideas, and people with new opinions and new thought and new perspectives should be able to come in on an equal playing field, on level ground, and debate ideas. And it doesn't become a contest of who can raise the most money because they vote for one union or they support one law enforcement agency. It should be about ideas, as Doc said, and whatever we can do to make it more of a level playing field and not so difficult on newcomers, I would support.
Okay. Ms. Singer?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I have mixed feelings
I am very much in favor of the idea of public financing for campaigns. I am very sympathetic to the fact that Suffolk County does not have enough money in order to do that. We have to be protecting our taxpayers at the same time that we're giving a level playing field. I am not an incumbent. I have not raised any massive amount of money from any union or corporation. I have an incumbent who appears with the Boy Scouts, with the Girl Scouts, with the soccer teams, and his name is in the newspaper all the time. I'm not objecting, that's part of the job. But the reality is, he gets the name recognition, and the only way I've gotten name recognition is by going door to door. So it is not a level playing field for the person who is not the incumbent. We need to find a fairer way. Thank you.
Mr. Trotter.
I was always adamantly against public campaign finance, but as I'm getting more into it, I think there might be a rule. But I put a bill in, there might be room for it. I put a bill in that says, if my brother-in-law got the contract to paint a bathroom in the county building, I would have to recuse myself from it. But I could take $1 million in campaign funding from a union, a public union, and I can go vote on their contract. How is that right? How is it that they can spend all this money to get me elected and I can vote on their contract? I put a bill in that said this: take all the money you want. You just can't vote on the contract. Never got out of committee. I limited it so you can't take the county executive more than us. We're limited. You can't take more than $3,000. But guess what? You can give $46,000. As a matter of fact, Steve Malone, if you want to play 9 holes of golf with him on a closed course, golf course, it's $46,000. Do you think you're going to owe someone favors for that? Of course. Of course you owe people favors. It's just nature. You should not be able to vote on contracts when you're taking money from the union, period.
Thank you. Ms. Berlin?
Yeah, I think we're here to talk about ourselves, not in our race, not the county executive's race. I can't get $1 million from anyone. I've never gotten $1 million from anyone. We have campaign limits based on our districts of the maximum amount that someone can give. If someone's going to write a ticket for one event, I don't see how that translates into anything. What concerns me the most about this is that not all of us comply with the campaign rules that are now. I have meticulous filings. Go online, look at them. You'll see every single one, all my contributions, all my expenses, everything. I don't hide anything, and I don't take anything from developers when their projects are pending before me, because I don't think that that's right. Not everybody does that. My opponent has not filed an accurate filing in 2 years since his last thing. The last filing he made was a 32-day primary filing, which was filed 3 months ago. So I wonder where all of his money is, because he has mailings going out, he has signs everywhere, zip tied to poles and all over the place,
Okay.
and there's no trace for the money.
Thank you. And in future also, please, as I said,
Well,
build
he's
your-
attacking the county executive, so I thought
wait.
that kind of like,
Yeah.
opened the gate on that.
Yeah, but build your case, okay?
Right,
And-
but
and
yes,
you
but I mean,
stated yours.
in all due respect, I mean, my case is complying with the
And
campaign
you
finance
said
rules
that.
that we
Yeah,
already
and
have,
that's
and
the
that's
important
not
thing.
what's going on. so.
And Mr.
Okay.
Gavia will get his minute now, please.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so as long as the county is operating with a deficit budget and we have debt that's climbing over $2 billion and growing each year, we should never support public campaign financing for any candidates. Because what the legislation that passed is that in the next election cycle, every candidate that will run for Suffolk County Legislature who qualifies will receive $50,000 to help pay for their campaign materials. So that's about $2 million. Now, where's that money coming from? We're getting new revenue from Jake's 58, from OTB. So money that's coming in from there should be used to pay the debt, to pay down the debt. I mean, I think it was around 2012 that we had to sell the Dennison building for $70 million. That was land that we own, and now we pay rent. So what's going on here? First, let's take care of our bills before we talk about any type of public
Okay.
financing.
Thank you. And we are going to go back to the revenue versus expenses angle later in the debate. There's a couple more questions I want to cover now. The next one will start,
Did I
where
get
are
to
we?
my red
Oh,
card?
sorry, red card, 30 seconds.
Okay, my
yes.
red card. I feel very strongly that Citizens United, which everybody may have heard of, was not a good decision. I do not believe corporations have the same rights as people. However, that is the law of the land. As long as Citizens United is the law of the land, then I don't see any reasonable way to limit the voice of union members to speak out on behalf of issues and legislators that they want to elect. Thank you.
Okay. Any other red cards on that subject?
Yeah.
That's your second one, then. That's your last one. You get to use it twice.
My first one, isn't it?
No. No. You did
I
the question
I have
on
I have a
storms.
novel idea that nobody's mentioned or probably even thought of. But you want to know how to pay for public financing? Have all of these people, these special interest groups, just donate to a campaign fund for Suffolk County so we can get a good and fair election without them benefiting from it. I think that would go over really well. Doesn't cost taxpayers anything. And I think that we could raise some money to be able to be more fair. And they won't have that special interest unless they do under-the-table money, which I wouldn't be surprised if they tried. But I think that's one reason one way to be able to pay for this.
Okay. Thank you. And Mr. McDermott, you actually are the first to get the next question. Mr. McDermott,
Yes.
this next question starts with you.
I'm listening.
Yeah.
I'm one of those few males that can multitask.
You get a lot of airtime. This question was actually raised by several people in different ways, so I'll just read this particular iteration. List 2 actions you would take, if elected, to tackle the opioid crisis. Explain how they help and how much you expect them to impact the problem.
Well, that's hard to answer in 1 minute because the opioid crisis is huge, huge. My daughter's boyfriend 2 years ago was found on the kitchen floor dead from a heroin overdose, which was also based on opioids. And so it's very near and dear to me that we do something about this. The Suboxone that the police use, one police officer said to me, what's the point? We're just going to do it again. That's not the solution. The solution is going to have to be to limit the doctors that are prescribing these and to be fully apprised of what they are. And I can tell you that I have a friend who is in a lot of pain from her back from a previous injury, and she's resisted opioids or painkillers that would do it. And I'm telling you, it's excruciating. So it's not just kids or anybody else. It could be anybody. And I think that the legalization and certainly the medical marijuana is a big possibility. The dispensaries are filled with older people that are in pain.
Thank you. Mr. Donnelly.
So I tackled this issue as the town of Babylon lead on kind of trying to challenge and combat the opioid crisis at the town level. So there's 3 parts to the opioid crisis. It's prevention, enforcement, and treatment. And we have to try and tackle all 3. And you do that, programs in schools, getting to the young people before they get to the bad product. We do that with enforcement, stopping the flow with our law enforcement folks. And then lastly, treating those that are addicted to this. It's the #1 public health crisis in this nation right now. At the county level, we're doing our very best, right, to fund some of the centers that we have, as well as working with our local law enforcement officers at the precinct level and trying to just address particular streets and areas where we know that it's going on. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chelios.
Well, I mean, this is a crisis that we've all wrestled with, not just on Long Island, but everywhere in the country, and it's certainly not going to be solved in a minute. I think it begins with education, not just in the schools, but with the parents. I don't think parents are fully aware of the age that their children are exposed to the opioid crisis. As Mr. Donnelly said, the overprescription by doctors writing scripts of harmful drugs by Purdue Pharmaceuticals as well as others, the doctors need to be held accountable for this. They can't have these drug companies giving them trips to the Bahamas and whatever else they need just so they can write, 20 prescriptions of Percocet. But all problems, the root is always at home. You got to start solving it at the home with the parents, talking to the kids every night, drill it home until they're, blue in the face. Other than that, we're just going to have people keep dying. And Doc's done a great job of fighting that as well.
Thank you. Lead into Dr. Spencer.
Thank you. And I do have to push back. Doctors definitely share some of the blame. And one of the things when I was in medical school, we were told that pain was the fifth vital sign and that adequately treating pain, we were taught that these drugs were not addicting, and it was false advertising. And by that time, the cat was, the horse was out of the barn. Now we've seen with iStop where every time I write a prescription, I have to check to see what opioids that person is on. And we're not seeing the opioids that out there as much anymore, but now they're turning to heroin. So we need to be able to allow our young people to cope, and we need to start in kindergarten educational programs that teach them not to turn to kind of synthetic solutions, whether it be nicotine, alcohol, which can open the door if someone has a predilection. I've offered Narcan. I've been able to raise the smoking age to try to address the nicotine addiction, but we have to hold the pharmaceutical companies responsible, and that's one of the, to be part of the solution.
Okay, Mr. Trotta, your turn.
Oh, I go?
Yep.
I think Legislator Donnelly summed it up.
Just pull up the mic a little.
Summed it up correctly. Education, treatment, and enforcement. I mean, something happened today that we were talking about in a public safety meeting where it's quite concerning to me. If a drug addict now breaks into your house and gets caught, he's out the next day with no bail, come January 1st. If, having been a narcotics addicted for 15 years, I see these trends. A guy will break into stores. If he gets caught now, he goes to court, or he's released from the precinct, no bail. We've just created a situation where people who would be incarcerated could get treatment and to be controlled and be taken away from drugs are now put right back on the street. This is something that the state legislature did and takes effect January 1st of this year. And this is going to be a problem. Mark my words, within the first 30 days, one of those people is going to go out and kill someone after being left out. So this is a problem on many levels, and it needs to be addressed on the state level.
Okay, Ms. Singer?
I don't really think the bail issue, which is a very big issue, is applicable here because the person, had they been apprehended breaking into somebody's house, would have in fact been out on bail anyway. They're not going to be incarcerated and receiving treatment. I do believe that we have the same issues. We have prevention, we have enforcement, we have treatment. We have a great hope that the money that will come from our share of the lawsuit against the opioid manufacturers could be used for educational programs starting at the earliest ages. It could be used for community support groups because parents are and relatives of those who are addicted are definitely impacted by drug use, and we need to be sure in the jails that they continue to receive the medically assisted treatment that is available. And there is not only one kind of medically assisted treatment. We need to have all the alternatives available to have the right choice made for each person.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gavia, your turn on this one.
Okay, so when my son was like in 8th grade, 9th grade, he actually had to go in for knee surgery. And I witnessed firsthand what happened after the operation. The nurse, they had him hooked up to the IV, and they said, if you feel pain, just press the button. And basically, they were promoting the use of Percocet. And I went to my ex-wife afterwards, and we got the prescription. And I showed her that this is something that we want to stop. And so this is a problem that begins in the hospitals with the medical field, with the doctors over-prescribing. So we did properly remove those narcotics the right way. And all he had to use was Aleve or some ibuprofen, and he was fine. He didn't need that. But it scares me to think about how many parents don't realize this, and they may potentially start an addict. So we need to educate parents. So I agree with what Mr. Donnelly said and everybody here said. I think we're all on the same page. Education is very important, and it was good that that day when I was there, I educated my son, I educated my ex-wife, and everybody involved, and we all agreed that that was the right path. But unfortunately, not enough people know this, and we can't stereotype. It could be anybody, your brother, your mother, sister, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Berline?
Yeah, I think Legislator Donnelly and Legislator Spencer really hit the nail on the head with this. I mean, it is a three-pronged approach. Prevention, which is so important to start when kids are so young, and just tell them to keep away from it. You don't want your children doing drugs. You don't want them anywhere near this. And to explain to them, at the various levels of schooling, what the implications can be and what the negative effects. Treatment is incredibly important. One of the first things I did as a legislator was got certified in Narcan, and I carry it around with me, because what's happening is that people are overdosing, they're getting the Narcan, they're getting into the hospital, and then they're going home. And it's happening again. So one of the programs that the legislature funded was to provide counselors for people who have overdosed, who are in the hospital, to try to steer them into programs so that they're not like in this revolving door where they're going to go home and use again and end up back in the hospital and hopefully be revived with Narcan. But so those the people who are there to help them get the treatment that they need, and we're funding it in the county, and we should continue with the money we're going to get from the pharmaceutical companies, which we are suing. So.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Trotter, you had a red card? Did you want to say something? On
Yeah,
this?
just, I mean, I don't know if my Jan understood, but people who, I can't tell you how many narcotics guys I arrested, thieves, robbers who broke into things with their parents or their friends said, keep them in jail. I'm not bailing them out. I want them to get treatment, because in jail, we have good treatment now. I mean, it's not just a prison. That doesn't happen anymore. Come January 1st, you break into your house, someone breaks into your house, steals your stuff, they're out. They're breaking into someone else's house the next week, or a day later, or an hour later. This is a problem. I mean, I'm not like throw the guys in jail, but they need treatment. And this is something that we're going to have to address, and it's happening January 1.
Okay, thank you. In deference to the weather, what we're going to do is take one more question, go around, and then do the closing statements. So we're done a little bit before 9, because I gather, I can't hear the rain, but I gather it's not a good scene outside. So there were many other topics, and I feel badly, because I think we've got some good conversation going, and I'd like to go a lot longer, but I can't. So we're going to start again with Ms. Singer and do what we did the first time. This question is what a lot of you have been referencing. So let me read the question. What ideas and resources would you propose to reduce the county's debt and provide a sustaining source of revenue for the county? I'm going to ask the timers if they can go like a minute and a half, give a little bit more time, because what I'd like you each to talk about, because the League studies the county budget. It's in our directory of public officials, which are out on the tables. We get it from the Legislative Budget Review Office. And ostensibly, everything's balanced. But we all know revenue is a hard nut to crack, because in today's world, taxes aren't increasing. At the same time, there is demand from our constituents for services. So what I'd like each of you to talk about is, how would you rejigger that balance? What has to be cut? At the end of the day, each of your communities will be impacted in some way, or segments of your communities. So I'd like each of you to kind of take a slightly deeper dive in a minute and a half on the subject and talk about both angles, income and outgoing. Okay? Ms. Singer, this one's yours.
I want to talk first, and most importantly, about income, because there are ways to increase county income, and I think one of the most important ways is by increasing job opportunities. The green energy field is wide open. We have the chance to improve our economic situation. We have the chance to provide education. We have the chance to provide jobs. We need to be working with the community college. We need to be working so that we have training programs and individuals can absorb the necessary technology to go out and make a living in these fields. The green energy program will also help our commercial and our tourism industry, and that is one of the very important ways that I think we can do this. I also think we can improve it. I know that there are some people who automatically think fees are bad, but we have a relatively small hotel surtax, and we have really nothing coming from restaurants. If you go to any other tourist area up and down the East Coast, you will find that most of those municipalities, the local municipalities, have instituted those kinds of fees to help fund local expenses. I really think that fees themselves are not necessarily bad. Some of them may have become somewhat excessive over the past few years, but I do not think the idea of funding government with fees all by itself is a bad thing. There are communities like in Florida. Florida doesn't even have an income tax, and fees are the only way they do these kinds of things. So I really would encourage that fees be re-examined rather than through the lens of an automatic knee-jerk if they're no good.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Trotter.
Yeah, Pat Vecchio, the Smithtown supervisor, was one of my early mentors. And you know what he said that a good government is, have the ability to do? Is to say no. You can't say yes to everything. You can't put a $25 million swimming pool at Suffolk Community College in Riverhead because the Southampton dive team doesn't want to drive to Brentwood. You can't build a $9 million fingerprint lab because someone thinks we need a $9 million fingerprint lab because it says the federal government needs to have an accredited lab. When you read the details, it's an accredited crime lab, which ours is. But unfortunately, the root of all evil, again, is the campaign contributions, and they don't come in unless you're building something. So when you build something, the architects, the engineers, the unions start piling money on you. You need to say no, plain and simple. We can't have everything in life. And raising fees, taxes, or anything should be out of the question because no one can afford to live here now. It'll just make it less attractive for anybody.
Ms. Berlin?
Sure. Well, now the county is going to be getting internet sales tax, which should be a nice chunk of money with which to, help our deficits and to help programs here in the county. Jake's 58 is also a very good income source for the county as well. Pension costs have increased, and healthcare costs have increased. So, we have to run government, and we have to take care of our employees, and we have to give them the benefits that they're expecting as part of being a county employee. Everybody's really good here at saying, no, I want to cut this, or I don't want this, or I don't want that. Well, what are you going to cut? What employees are you going to cut? What programs are you going to cut? Where are you going to make up that shortfall? You can say no all you want, but where's the yeses? Where are we going to, make a difference? In the Budget and Finance Committee, we sat with each of the non-for-profits and we asked them, how is your budget? What are you doing with the money? How many people are you reaching? Are you meeting your goals? And that's what we need to do. We need to make sure that the money that we are spending is being spent wisely, that it's being given to organizations that are doing the right thing by their constituents, that they're meeting their goals and their obligations. And, we have to be very careful about the organizations that are receiving the funding. We can expand our waterfronts, and I'm on the MIRAC committee for how to increase the money that's coming in from our waterfronts and have more activities at the water because we have a beautiful, beautiful county, and the amount of money we're getting from from people visiting here too has increased significantly.
Thank you. Mr. Gavia.
The problem with government is that they have a responsibility when spending other people's money. And I remember it was around 2012 that the Suffolk County government was so excited that they were going to move the traffic court to Suffolk County because up until that point, it was under the jurisdiction of New York State. And the idea was this is going to be wonderful. It's going to generate millions of dollars in revenue. It's going to take care of all our problems. We'll sell the Dennison building for $70 million. We'll get revenue for tickets now. We'll keep it all. But it's actually made things worse, because what happens with government every time is that they get a new revenue source and they figure out new ways to spend it. And that's what will continue with the internet sales tax and the Jake's 58 sales revenue that comes in, and any other revenue source. Because now it's like all of a sudden, let's hire this person, let's hire that person, let's give this organization a bigger fee, bigger funds to spend and waste taxpayers' money. We need to make hard decisions. I know some of you in the audience are business owners. I was a former business owner. Newsday is a good example of a business. They had to make major decisions. They had to cut a lot of employees. They couldn't charge higher for their newspapers. Now the New York Times delivers their newspaper. The New York Times publishes their newspapers. But that's what business does, and that's what we have to do. And I have a business acumen. I ran businesses. I know the numbers. I know the numbers in Suffolk County. We need to cut spending and stop taxing the people.
Thank you. Mr. Donnelly?
So it's a unique question, and there's no clear answer. It's really that simple. Legislator Trotter made some good points. Legislator Berlin made some good points. At the end of the day, most counties in the nation, in particular Nassau and Suffolk, we get a whole host of unfunded mandates. Legislator Trotter referenced the Criminal Justice Reform Bill, which most of us are outraged at. But we get this whole host of unfunded mandates. Our social service budget is roughly about $650 million. $600 million of that is federal and state requirements that we are required to do, right? There's services that we are required to do. So at the end of the day, we don't have a great deal of flexibility at the county municipal budget level. We really don't. I mean, anything else is very superficial other than to try and make political narrative talking points. And we have personnel that we have to fund. We have basic infrastructure needs that we have to fund. We have basic social service needs that we have to fund. And all of that together, right, those are things you're not going to cut. We're going to cut the amount of law enforcement officers that are out on the street. We're going to cut the amount of child protective workers that are down on the street. And then when they reference the community groups, all 18 legislators ask for money for their community groups. Legislator Trotter included, myself included, Legislator Spencer included, because guess what? That's what you're supposed to do as an elected official. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. McDermott.
McDermott, yeah. I'd like to be able to say that everybody up here has a good idea, but they don't seem to get it. They don't get it. These crazy fees we have are out of the question. I mean, fees for, now they're talking about fees for straws. I mean, fees for the plastic bags, which the Suffolk County doesn't get any money, but that was the intention, I believe. The red light cameras, which are going to go away because they're completely unconstitutional and unfair, and they've gone away all over the country. If we don't start really cutting spending on redundant areas, eliminating the Suffolk County legislature by, I think Mr. Gavia said was $10 million. $10 million. I mean, we have redundancy of spending. The executive has done a horrible job financially. We have deficit after deficit. It just grows and grows. And that means that's money that we owe. Even when you bring in all the money that they want, we're still in a deficit by how many? How much did we say for the deficit? It was like how much was it?
3.4 billion.
Yeah, billion. I mean, listen, if you want to change, you're going to have to change the way things have been done. You can't keep doing the same thing, voting the same people in, the same Democrat, Republicans, you know, that you've always voted in and expect to have any change. Einstein said that was a definition of insanity, and I agree, it is insane. Let's try to put some new blood in, something new in. And I think that would be certainly me and other libertarians, and Greg Fisher for county executive. That's what I think we
Thank
should
you.
do.
Thank you very much. Dr. Spencer?
I believe that we have our challenges, but I also believe as a physician, I know that sometimes when I do a surgery on someone, I know that they're in pain, and sometimes they come in and they don't understand that healing has to take place. And it's been slow, but we're talking about healing a county. So some of the information is that since I took office in 2011, there are 1,300 less employees in Suffolk County. Our payroll was $1.1 billion, and now it's $1.07 billion. It's gone down over 7 years. We've combined the Office of Comptroller and Treasurer. There's no one-shots in this budget. The structural deficit was almost $500 million. Am I celebrating? Absolutely not. But we are taking steps. We see for the first time everyone's paying into their health insurance. We see now that the OTB is almost out of debt, and so instead of getting $3 million per year, we'll get $20 million per year from that, and we'll get internet sales tax. But I don't think we can just spend that money blindly. What I would like to see is us attack healthcare. We have to get rid of unfunded mandates, but having healthcare costs that's over $500 million. I think that we can put healthcare navigators so that we can cut down on the cost of MRIs or people just going and having uncontrolled healthcare costs. That's my idea of further things that we can do. But I think the patient, we're still sick, but we're getting better.
Thank you.
We're going to continue to do that.
Okay. Mr. Chelios will go, and then you'll get your rebuttal, okay? Mr. Chelios?
Well, I think that balancing the county is no different than taking care of your household finances. You have to figure out how much you're spending and then figure out a way to bring in more. As others have mentioned, we have to go a line-by-line audit, and if we could even save 2% on every county, every budget, on each department, on each agency, we can save $20, $30, $40 million a year on a $3 billion budget. In terms of our new ideas, I think we could roll the Jake's 58 success story, bring that over to Pilgrim State, and turn Pilgrim State into a family destination. So people will come here for a convention center, an indoor family fun park, a water park, what have you. Come up with some good ideas, some innovative ideas to attract some more tourism here. In addition to that, as I said earlier, the best and quickest way to bring real money into the county is to bring some dynamic companies in here. I come from the private sector. I understand what's exciting out there right now. The younger generation, they want to hear things like robotics and AI and big data. They don't want to hear about some of the old line businesses that have been here forever. They want to work on Long Island if they can. That's what's going to bring in corporate revenue. That's what's going to bring in tax revenue. And that's going to create jobs. That will get us excited again. We were a leader in technology once before. We have to do it again if we want to keep the county going.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gavia, you have a rebuttal?
How much time do I have?
30 seconds.
Okay. All right, real quick. All I hear is just excuses. That's it. That we have to throw up our hands and there's nothing we do. We have government mandates. We have to spend this, spend that. What is wrong with electing people that are willing to do the hard work and figure out how to cut the spending so this way we can attract businesses? Because what businesses, what individuals want to come here from other states, from other places and pay more taxes? It's not easy what I'm proposing, but I'm willing to do the work that's involved to do that. And that's very important to emphasize. Otherwise, the story that the other side is just telling you is expect more taxes, expect more fees, and expect your cost of living to continue to rise.
Thank you. Doc Spencer, you had a rebuttal, and then Ms. Berland, too.
Certainly. The reality is that the county provides services, and some of these services are the difference between life and death for our families. And we have to continue to do that. I didn't make excuse. I lined out what we have done. I showed how we've been able to decrease the workforce, be more efficient, cut down on payroll, and make decisions that have gotten rid of the structural deficit that now will give us a chance to start to get rid of the long-term debt. We have more work to do, but it is not an excuse. When you have people paying into their health insurance, everyone, that's real change. And
Okay.
we've got more to do, but I'm going to continue to do the hard work.
Okay. Ms. Berland, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. Yes, I want to really echo what Doc Spencer said. We are doing the hard work there, and it's very easy to come up here and say, cut this, cut that, cut this, cut that. What? Cut what? Be specific. Look at what we each stand for. What is it you want to cut? Where are you going to make up that money from? Where are you going to pay for those services once you cut it? Which employees are you going to cut? Which programs are you going to cut? Just coming in there and say, if I come in there, I can sit down and I can talk to everyone and then we can decide. Well, that's not good enough. You need to tell us what you want to do before you get there, not have a conversation once you're there.
Thank you. Ms. Singer?
What
30 seconds.
doesn't seem to have come up is that cutting jobs has a ripple effect. While somebody here, more than one person here, has suggested that that's exactly what we should be doing, every time you cut a job, you are impacting a family's income, you are impacting the neighborhood restaurant and cafes and the school supplies, and what you end up with is an economy that takes a nosedive. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to do the closing statements, and this time we'll go. You started, so Mr. Chelios, you do the first closing statement, and then we'll come down the road this way, and that will be the last part of the debate. 1 minute.
Okay, sure. I love this county. I love this town. I've been here my whole life. It would be an honor to serve the legislature with some of the great folks we have out there. But I think we really need to be a little more forward-thinking. We need to do things a little bit differently. One thing that I was kind of passionate about is no one's mentioned 5G yet tonight, but you'll know a lot more about it in about a year or so when there's cell towers going up in everyone's backyard. I think that we have an opportunity to be the leader in the country in 5G research and make the carriers pay their part of the burden. If they want to come here and see how it works on Long Island, we should be able to tax them accordingly and let the users share in that tax too if they want 5G. It's going to support the economy of the future, but it's a dangerous thing. We don't have enough research on it. We could be the county, we could be the leaders in research, get people from Brookhaven, Stony Brook, Cold Spring Harbor Laboratories, some smart RF engineers, and show the rest of the country what we're doing in terms of research. Other than that, I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, and I'm looking forward to the next few weeks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Dr. Spencer.
Thank you, and thanks for this opportunity. And I'd also like to thank my opponent for running and for what he's contributed. I have enjoyed this opportunity to be able to discuss the issues this evening. One of the things that I think is important is that since I've been in the legislature, I have gotten results. Some of the things that I've been able to initiate have gone statewide, such as raising the smoking age. Some have gone nationally, protecting our kids from propeller guards, protecting them from energy drinks, powdered caffeine. I feel every day I wake up and I do this job thinking of our families, thinking of the people that I represent, and I've gotten results. And so I would like to continue to do the hard work. I have a vision, and my vision comes from you. It comes from the needs. And so my name is Dr. William Spencer. I am the legislator of the 18th District. I would like to ask that you would vote for me on November 5th, and I will continue to do the hard work of the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McDermott.
Yes, I have enjoyed coming through the rain and coming here tonight and talking to you folks. I want you to know that I'm no stranger to adversity. 4 years ago, I lost my right leg. Haven't found it yet. And a lot of people that had the same injury had given up hope of doing anything. They didn't want a prosthetic, they didn't want a wheelchair, but I kept going. And the only reason I'm running, the only reason, is I really think we need to get some integrity into our government here. And I'm not really talking specifically about the other legislators here. I like a lot of what I've heard. But we spent months interviewing candidates from all over Suffolk County. We decided on 60 candidates that we felt had the integrity to continue to be candidates for the Libertarian line, and many of them are on this dais now, Hector and Rob and Garrett, and I am in favor of. I want to ask you for your vote. My name is Michael McDermott. I'm on the Libertarian line, and I think we need to do something different in order to expect different things to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Donnelly.
So thank you to the League of Women Voters for tonight. It's always a great opportunity to come here. Most folks know me. I simply just try and do the right thing. I've served in public service and in public safety my entire adult life. I'm always here for the residents. I give my cell phone out in the entire district. And the greatest compliment I always get is when people tell me that I'm doing a good job. So I hope that you'll continue to have your faith in me and re-elect me to another term. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Gavia.
I want to thank once again the League of Women Voters and everybody for coming out here today. I really hope that you vote for me. The reason that I want to be your legislator is because I really do care about people. Since January, I have been going door to door to many homes. I literally have been in every street, every block throughout the district, which goes down to North Bayshore and Brentwood as well. And I've been listening to the concerns that the people have. And, you know, many of them have shared with me their problems. They're concerned about public safety. They're concerned about the future for their children. They're concerned about the drugs and the gangs. And they want to make it a better place for them to live. So I've been listening. I've been working with them to try to help them. With some organizations, people have come to me with their individual needs, and I've tried my best. And I told them, I promise you, if you have confidence in me, I will help make your life better. And that's what it's all about. So please remember me on November 5th. Vote for Hector Gavia. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Berlin?
First, I'd like to thank the League for having us in Five Towns College, and for each one of you who came out here tonight in this downpour, and for everyone who's going to be watching this online for taking the time to really care about who you're going to cast your vote for. When I first ran for office, I was the vice president of House Beautiful Civic Association in Dix Hills. So my start in making a difference was from a civic perspective, and I wanted to make a difference on the town board. So I believe I did that, and I think my record on the town board speaks for itself, and I've enjoyed working as your legislature. Does that stop already? Okay, wrong sign, okay. I've enjoyed working as the legislator for the 16th District. I ask you to please go to my website, susannaberland.com. Look at my record. Look at what I've done. Look at what I stand for. Look at my, what? Oh, I'm sorry. look at you. Right, look at him. Right. Take a look at the campaign finance filings if you need to. Everything is open, above board, and honest. I ask for your support respectfully on Election Day, and remember, there's early voting too. So you can vote from October 26th through November 2nd. And November 3rd, November 3rd, in the town of Huntington, it's at the Dix Hills Fire Department. But, for those of you in the 16th outside of the town of Huntington, we will talk after. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Trotter.
Okay, thanks for having me. It was very nice everyone come out in this crummy weather. I just want to correct one thing Doc said, that the county payroll actually went down. Well, Newsday, I just got an alert about our budget. There's a $20 million hole, and one of the things it says in it is the county increased payroll by $315 million since 2012, despite 1,250 less employees. Now, I want you to think about this. We've had 7 bond downgradings. We're at $3.4 billion in long-term debt, and I want my kids to live here. I don't want to have to pay a balloon payment in 2029 on a water fund that we shouldn't have stole, or the $385 million that we took from the pension fund that we shouldn't have done. It's about responsible government. We can't have all government employees with big pensions. I have a pension. I think I earned it. I don't begrudge them. I would like to pay the cops and all the employees twice as much as we do. But the reality is we can't even afford to pay them what we're paying them now. And that's the number one expense we have. The $600 million Legislator Donnelly talked about, we get that money from the state and the federal government. That's all subsidized. Thank you.
Okay. Because I'll play school teacher here, I didn't realize you were using Wi-Fi in here and getting your alerts. So, in fairness, you quoted him on something that he didn't have access to.
Oh, absolutely.
No, he didn't have
Well,
access
no,
to that.
this is a budget review report, so we did have access to it.
I'm going to give him 15 seconds. Just You can comment because you were signaling on that. Because we haven't really been referencing things on our phones at all. So do you want a few seconds to comment?
I think that you can do your own research and check the numbers, and I'll leave that up to you. And I'll leave our record of what we've done up to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Singer, your closing statement?
This position carries with it a great deal of responsibility to serve and to protect and to keep us safe. Everything that I'm going to mention right now has been discussed with voters at some point during this past election season. I want to be protecting the water we drink by addressing nitrogen, 1,4-dioxane, and chemical contamination. It means efforts to obtain sewers and on-site wastewater treatment facilities throughout the county, working with town governments as they plan for the future, continue the ongoing battle to keep opioids and heroin off the streets, having a professional police force protecting us against all violent crimes in all neighborhoods, service for veterans and the elderly among us, providing for housing and transportation, and last but not least, it means addressing the high cost of living on Long Island and making the hard decisions on the budget each year. Elections matter. I'm hoping for your vote this November 5th, or earlier if you choose early voting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and again, as has been stressed, early voting is in all of New York State this year for the first year. This year is the practice year. It's important you go and try it because you want to make sure in the federal elections, presidential and congressional next year, that everything's going to be worked out very well. It's different times, it's different locations. You have some choice. You'll be working on an iPad type device. You'll have like a department store signature card thing. But you will get your own ballot and you will put it in the machine with total privacy the way you always do. So the League, of course, is encouraging everyone. I want to thank the candidates. I only wish, as I said, we could have talked more because there's a lot of other topics that were really important.
I just want to take a point of personal privilege to thank you for doing an outstanding job tonight. And I just think you deserve a big hand.
Okay, and thank you all. Have a good evening. Drive safely. Yeah. I'll have more.
I'm just kidding.